Good morning, my name is Daniela, and today I'm going to be telling you guys about the census that happens every 10 years here in America that tries to count every American and everybody living in America, because we don't just count Americans, we try to count immigrants, we count even people who are here doing college. So this is an important thing that they do every 10 years to allocate over $675 billion worth of funding. So we're going to talk about why a lot of people don't respond to the census, why it's our responsibility to respond to the census, and then how that directly affects our communities when we respond to the census and do our duty to do that. So I'm going to start out with this. And it's our census taker, and he's at the 3 little pigs, the 3 blind mice, and the 3 men in the tub. He's kind of sweating, and he says, I wish they were all this easy. And that's because in communities, they see less than a 50% response to any given census. And this is years before they have all of this data collected saying that really we have a problem with responding to the census. And within specifically Native American communities, we see that a lot of this is because of fear and mistrust in the government. But if we think about it, have you ever been asked to respond or RSVP to a party, right? Most of the times we know what that means though, right? If you RSVP, it means that you're going to come. They say, respondez s'il vous plaît, that's what it means. So you're saying, yes, I'm gonna come to your party, for sure I'm gonna be there. So if I'm planning a party and I ask you, are you going to come to my party for sure, and you say yes, that means if I have $50, I know I can, who's gonna be there, how much food I have to get, how many drinks I have to get, and then how much I have for whatever else, right? But if you don't respond and I don't know you're coming, chances are you're not gonna get food, right? And that's gonna suck. So the census is just like that. The government is asking us to respond, please, and tell how many people are living in America. Because if we continue to fear and mistrust the government, we're not going to get the funding that our communities need. So all of these things are linked together. They directly affect one another. If we have this fear and mistrust, and it was necessary for a time for our communities to be mistrustful of a government that basically tried to keep our communities down. And to a point that still happens today in America. But the more we respond and the more we count our bodies, the better it is going to be for our communities. So we have to get over this mistrust. Now, for college students, you guys are lucky. If you live on campus, you're automatically counted through the housing department. So the college fills out everything, you're counted, you're never going to be bothered by this. But if you live off campus, they're going to be asking you from March 12th to, you can begin the online process to fill out the census, which they say only takes about 10 minutes depending on how many people live in your house. So this fear and mistrust leads to these skeptical attitudes. We don't count. It's not going to matter if I send this in. Why should I count my family in a country that doesn't count me, right? We hear this a lot, and we do feel that. Even I do. But looking this up and realizing how important this is, how it's going to affect my children, how it's going to affect my dad, because he's a senior citizen, how it's going to affect your families individually. So if you have a grandma that you love and you want her to get the support that she needs, if she needs Meals on Wheels, if she needs to go to the doctor, these are funds that are directly set aside for people like that. So if they don't know that your grandma's in this community, they're not going to count her share when they, and I think this year they said it's over $1 trillion now of funding that's going to be directly allocated to states. So that's an important process. But then on the other side with the government, we look at that, and depending on how many people live in a community, that's how many people, how many representatives we get to say, North Dakotans need this. North Dakotans need this. This is what's important to us. Our needs are very different than, say, if we lived in Los Angeles, right? But we still have needs in the community. So if we don't respond to the census, then they can't count us, and then that means that we don't get the representation that we need. It directly affects the electoral college. So if we want to vote blue in a presidential race like this year, last year's census would have directly affected that. So if we don't count our communities, and that goes for Native communities especially, they're very mistrustful, but they need to understand that If we want representation that directly affects us, that tells what we really want, we need to get our families to get over this hump of mistrust and fear. And we need to tell them, you know, we can do this together. It's confidential, which is the next thing I'm gonna talk to you guys about after my funding. So the funding, like I said, it's over $675 billion. Now, this man, Terry Dukes, says, we are also dealing with a fact of government distrust here as well, which is certainly more significant among immigrants, but is also strong among a lot of younger minority members. So again, we need to get over that. We need to help our families get over that. And we need to tell them that this funding, it doesn't just go to, you know, somebody's pockets. This is going to programs like school lunches. That directly affects our little brothers or sisters or our cousins or our family, right? It goes to education programs, so it helps after school programs. So if you're a single parent and you have children that you need to be watched after school, this goes to those kind of programs as well. So we're seeing that it can directly affect you and your work performance or your school performance. Infrastructure, we think about the roads in Bismarck and how bad they can be, right? You're going through and it literally feels like you're on a back country road. Infrastructure, roads, bridges, the washout that happened down by Standing Rock. I think it was outside of, what was that, Cannonball? Do you guys remember that? The road washed out and 2 people were killed. These things are maintenance, but it's also directly affected by the funding that North Dakota gets. And the funding that North Dakota gets is directly affected by how many people we say live in North Dakota. So, and if you don't want knockers on your door, they start coming from May to July. And that's if you don't give your information to the census. So you have 3 ways to do that, which is, like I said, online. You can do it by the phone this year, and you can also mail in the slip. The mailed slips come in April, and then, like I said, knockers come May through July. And so I'm going to show you on here what they ask. These are some of the questions that they ask on the census. And I'm going to tell you right now, it is very invasive. They want to know everything about you. But then you think about the things that we have, right? The programs that we have in America. So they ask you your name, your birth, your sex, your race. Now, people kind of get upset about this. But what they're doing is, in business, we talked about the Discrimination Acts. I don't know if you were there, but we talk about Equal Opportunity Acts, right? Equal Employment Acts, these kinds of things. When you tell them that you're Native American, they count that, and they say that you can't discriminate based on this percentage of people within your community that are Native American, or that are Hispanic, or that are African American. And these things, these questions go to directly protect and help promote inclusivity. So if you want to get a job somewhere and they say, oh no, sorry, there are laws in place that directly affect that. You can't discriminate. You have to give equal housing, right? The number of people living or staying with you. Those are people that live with you throughout the year, even if they stay with you a majority of the time. They want you to be counted once and once only. The relationship, that's a new one. They're asking again, and that's how you identify. And like I said, these can be really invasive when you think about it, but they're going to programs that help protect your rights as a human being, because we all have those fundamental rights. And these questions help us protect and enact those fundamental rights. If we think that we should be included, if we think that we should be given an equal opportunity, then this data that they collect on us goes to help those programs to be funded, to continue funding those, and to pass those along. So it really does affect you. Now, if somebody comes and asks you for these things, your social security number, your maiden name, your bank account, obviously we know that's a scam. The census will not ask you that information. So this is something that we can tell our families to protect our families' information, because the other thing about the census is that a lot of people think they're going to tell how many people are there. It's going to cut your Medicaid, or it's going to cut your SNAP benefits. but actually there are laws in place like the Title 13 and the Privacy Act that directly protect your information. It's confidential. If anybody gives out your information, they can be fined up to $250,000 and serve 5 years in prison for giving away your information. So this is something that they take seriously. Your confidentiality is important to them, it's important to you, but it's also necessary to get our information to help fund these programs that we all need as college students. This goes toward Pell Grant funding. So if they don't know that we're all going to college, how are they going to give us the funding for that? So this does directly affect our lives. And so because of that, I want to show you guys how easy it's going to be to do this. So now, if you live on campus, you're already counted. You don't have to worry about this. But there's a lot of information on this link that UTTC gave us that I believe is important for your family to know too. And who can our family trust? Mostly their own family members, right? They're not going to trust some government official that shows up with a box and wants to know how many people are living with you today. It's very invasive, but if we give them the right information and they're allowed to do this on their own time, I believe that it will help them feel better about doing it. So I'm going to show you here, we're on the UTTC homepage. We're going to go to Student Life, which is where our library resource is. You can click on the library and scroll down until you find Census 2020. So the librarians have put this on here, and these are all of the little links that you can go to that tell you about the census. I don't have enough time to tell you everything about it. There's a lot of good information on here that's important, like I said, for your family to know. It affects you, it affects everybody in your family. If you want them to live good lives, we need to tell the government that we're here. As Native American communities especially, we need to stand up and say, we are still here. We do still count. Our counts have been wrong continuously because of our fear and mistrust, because of our skeptical attitudes that say, I don't count, it's not going to matter. But this directly affects the funding that we receive as college students, as K through 12 students. This affects going into college, what kind of life they're going to have, what kind of choices they're going to make. It affects us as we become parents. It affects us as we become elderly people. It affects us as veterans in America. And so this is a very important topic that I would like all of you to know about, as many as there are. And I'm going to give you a flyer because I do believe that there's a lot of information on that as well. And if you don't use the flyer, please hand it to somebody who will use it. So, thank you.